Hello everyone, welcome to AIDO Network International Business and Prosperity Forum 2020. I'm Anne Hambega from AIDO Network International. Today's topic is Diaspora Direct Investment. The discussion will be on how well investment potential of the African community diaspora can be harnessed. Hosted by Princess Tsepi and moderated by Bebe Clement.
Ladies and gentlemen, right now we are going to go to the next panel, and it is going to be led or moderated by Bebe Clement or Mrs. Bebe Clement. But before she comes on, we are going to hear from Mr. Anthony Kituka, Executive Director, Equity Bank, Uganda. Sir, you can take the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the team at AIDO. Thank you for all the panelists who have spoken so far. I've just been listening to a really impassioned presentation about energy in Africa, and it's good to understand and see how engaged people around the world are about empowering and improving Africa, including Africans themselves. The topic for us, I think, is really about diaspora direct investment in Africa. And as a banker, commercial banker in East Africa, I work for a bank which is operating in 6 African countries in Sub-Saharan Africa. That is Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Sudan, Rwanda, and DRC. The bank has about 15 million customers and is asset value worth about $10 billion. The key drive for that bank is to focus on financial inclusion and using financial services to transform lives, give dignity, and create opportunities for wealth creation. Now, of course, the diaspora is a huge partner in this process. I think I want people to understand 2 different things about the diaspora and how they can participate in the development of Africa. The first one, obviously, is in terms of remittances. Everybody understands what remittances are. It is your $20, your $10, your $15, your 20 pounds, which is sent to your mom and pop to deal with medical emergencies, funerals, and so on. The other aspect would be direct investment. This could be either in real estate or in actual industry or in actual enterprise of some sort. I mean, the numbers are a bit interesting. Just to give you a feel, according to the World Bank, really in the last 15 years, the amount of DDI that has come through for Africans into Africa's range moved from about $20 billion to about $60 billion. The amount of remittances has done about the same, from 25 to 45 to $50 billion. The interesting thing about the cycle of money coming into Africa is, of course, around crises like we have in COVID right now, remittances go up, DDI kind of comes down. Everybody's focusing on keeping people alive. Now, as a banker, what do I look at and see how I can support that process? We must help the diaspora identify the winning industries or sectors or segments in the economies, and maybe the losing ones at the moment. Currently, with the COVID pandemic, we see the winning sectors mainly as obviously health and Medicare. We see ICT, we see agriculture, we see food, and we see the subject of the prior panelists, which was energy, and of course some infrastructure. The area which is really struggling at the moment because of social distancing and lockdowns and so on would be your tourism industry, your hospitality, hotels, etc. Entertainment is struggling a bit. Education, because most schools are still closed, and unless they're moving online, there's some struggle there. How do commercial banks probably help with this? Obviously, we provide financing, and we hope this financing can be put towards a balance between immediate need or consumer need and, of course, and long-term investments. We, of course, also we are international money transfer partners. So money coming through from Wave, from HomeSend, Western Union, MoneyGram, the banks provide a safe way and a convenient way to do that. I had the previous speakers talk about sending money to the villages. In the old days, it would be go to a post office or go to an agent somewhere in a town and get the money. But now the money can reach you in the comfort of your home, conveniently to your phone or to your bank account, which you can access digitally, meaning online. The last leg would be savings and investment. Obviously, identifying the savings and investment sectors which are safe for diaspora. I mean, the key challenges we see across Africa is money is sent from Europe or it's sent through from other parts of the world. And when it gets down to Africa, you find that it's not being used as planned. Either relatives are siphoning it away, or there's lack of professionals. You want to build a house, you find it's half a house. You find you want to invest in health, you find no medicines or no hospital beds. You want to invest in ICT, you're getting bogus computers out of China or somewhere. I mean, all these challenges. And how do financial institutions and other partners help protect those investments and encourage them? Because again, you'll soon also probably see that sometimes the money goes into informal family businesses, which is what the banks can help you with. Those MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprises. We help them with financial literacy, training, using budgeting, accounting, and such things to protect your investments when you send them through to Africa. Sometimes it's just about providing a safe, secure place to put money, because African infrastructure challenges means that the bank is not where you go, it is something you do. So I think at the end of the day, we should be, the banks, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, especially my bank, Equity Bank, focus on ensuring that we can help people open accounts digitally, online, make it easy to access and keep a sight and visibility of your remittances, of your projects as you invest. In some jurisdictions, for example, you just need your national ID and a passport and a link as simple as a WhatsApp link, and you can get a bank account. And that is probably what we think about going forward. So we're a bit behind time, and I really want to jump into the discussion, because anything that will enhance diaspora, direct investment, even remittances, will help increase foreign currency into Africa, which we can use to help build and develop Africa and access the capital goods we require to develop this continent. Mr. Moderator, thank you so much for listening to me, and I give it back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Kituka. Thank you very, very much. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like Mrs. Bebe Clement to take up the stage, or show the hand, who is the moderator for this next panel. The panel is going to be the Diaspora Direct Investment, harnessing the investment potential of the Africa diaspora community. On the panel, we are going to have His Royal Highness Chief Bimbo Edward Roberts Foleyan from 3 Williams Ltd. We are going to have Mr. Anthony Kituka again from Equity Bank Uganda Limited. We are going to have Ms. Stella Opoku Owusu, African Foundation for Development, which is called AFFORD. We are also going to have Dr. Melida Harris Barrow and Maxine Rainford Pate from Africa Chamber of Commerce in Scandinavia. Can we please have the panelists and the moderator to take up the stage?
As you've heard, my name is Bibi Clement, and I will be facilitating this section. And you're welcome once again to harnessing the investment potential of the Africa diaspora community. All my guests, are we ready? All my panelists, are we ready to go? On behalf of AIDO and ACS, I want to say welcome and good afternoon. And we're going to jump right in there. Just for housekeeping rules to our delegates, if you'd be kind enough to put all your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, which is about the middle of your screen. There is a tab there. If you click on that, you can put your questions in there. And after about 30 minutes, we will be taking questions. I'm going to make this as speedy as possible because we are quite behind time, if that's okay. All right. Now, I thank you, Mr. Kituka, for telling us or defining for us what remittance is, because not everybody knows. And I just want to give a very quick definition as well, that remittance is cash and non-cash items that flow through formal channels such as electronic wire, or informal channels such as money or goods sent across borders. All that constitutes remittance. Now, I'm going to ask some questions, and I just ask anybody to jump in there if you want to respond to it, except I specifically specify that this question is addressed to someone in particular. So sub-Saharan Africa remains one of the most expensive places to remit money. As of the last check, it was about 9.4%, which is about 25% higher than the rest of the world. Why is it that expensive, and what is being done to reduce that figure? Mr. Kituka, can I ask you to respond to that initially, sir?
Okay, yes, I mean, I agree entirely. I mean, and in a bank which wants to enhance inclusion, you must manage costs. Why are the costs high? Infrastructure is expensive in Africa. I'll use as a basic example. Some markets, regulations require that the bank is a physical building. We haven't moved very far towards digitization and spreading technology in every single location and village and so on. So somebody to get access to the money must travel several kilometers away, have a secret question to answer. And there are also other things like fraud, insurance, because it's very cash-based. Transactions are cash-based, and physical cash costs money in terms of insurance, moving it around, security, and so on and so forth. All those things true are part of the cost in the money in the transmission. The other aspect, I suppose, is the fact that the recipients want to receive cash in local currency. So usually there's also a translation loss in there. I mean, if you're selling pounds or euros and it has to get to a village in Naira or in Kenya shillings or in Uganda shillings or in Zambian kwacha, that translation also makes people lose money. I think there are ways and means to do that and reduce those costs. Of course, the charges and the commissions for the different players, because it goes through several hands. Everybody who's touching it will want if it's a post office, they want a commission. If it's a ship, an agent, they want a commission. I also reducing the legs in between sender and recipient is what we'd look at in terms of trying to manage that cost. And in most cases, going digital is a good way to address that. I'd like other panelists maybe to throw in something as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with all the points that Mr. Katuka had just made. But also just to give a particular, in addition to all of that, in some specific instances, we did at Afford, we had done some studies in or a forum in Sierra Leone just to understand a little bit better about the costs. And one of the key things that came through was the fact that in terms of trade, the country itself isn't making enough, is not exporting enough to be able to make the kind of the larger numbers of foreign currency that I would like to make. And so what was happening, this was just a few years ago, what was happening was that you had the black market essentially, which was operating, but also in a lot of cases, it wasn't so much black in the sense that it was known, and sometimes the banks themselves struggled to actually be able to pay out and would actually send some of their own sort of the customers to the black market. But in any case, I think there also needs to be a focus around trade as well, and how we increase trade and how the diaspora also supports with this area as well, to be able to add to trying to reduce the costs of remittances, which is absolutely critical. I think from the SDG target 10C, which is trying to reduce the cost of remittances by 3% by 2030, is something that we are focused on. And I believe in terms of some of the savings as well that has been made, is that if you can reduce the cost of remittances by a percentage, you're actually also releasing another 1 billion into the economy. And in the case of Africa overall as well, we also know that about 20 to 25% of remittances goes directly into investment of some kind. So again, it shows the significance of trying to reduce the cost of remittances and where that money actually goes.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, my next question, I think I'm going to address to Chief Folayan, if he's with us. Are you with us, sir? Now, governments and development partners create programs and incentives to attract foreign investment. And we see this all the time. We have foreign investors that come in, the red carpet gets rolled out, the key stakeholders suddenly become available. They bend over backwards to remove all the red tape for them. But we don't see this happen with the African diaspora. They're not given the same level of priority. Why is that? And what can be done to address that? Sarah, if you'd like to take that, first of all.
So, I mean, in relation to that, I mean, you're absolutely right in the sense that the potential of diaspora investment remains untapped. There are a number of examples out there, even in Africa. You've got, for example, in Gambia and in Ghana, where they have incentive programs that are basically managed by the national inward investment promotion agencies, specifically for the diaspora. But there aren't enough of them. You've also got other programs in different countries. In Senegal, in Morocco, they have incentive programs where they will provide a match fund to the diaspora for them to invest or for them to develop projects. And you need a lot more of that. There's a lot of not just willingness. I mean, we can see from the amount of diaspora remittances that the diaspora, whether they're entrepreneurs, whether they are just individuals, businessmen, investors, they will continue to invest. The question is much more about how do we add value? And the way that we have seen this being done is where you have governments and others who can provide a match fund, for example, to leverage the investment that the diaspora are actually, making. In addition, one of the other ways as well that we can see that you can really sort of like leverage diaspora investment is if you can apply the same principles of PPP, private and public partnerships at the macro level. And if you can apply that to this middle level around where the diaspora are trying to scale their work, then you will have a chance of actually being able to put in a lot more, like the resources into projects and into development work and investment.
Does anybody else want to respond to that, please? Any of the other panelists want to respond to that?
Baby, I think just to add on to what Stella has said.
Please.
I mean, and you mentioned the whole idea of rolling out the carpets. And then maybe it just comes down to the formality of the whole process. I mean, many of these enterprises which are coming from other parts of the world come with 2 or 3 things. One, as Stella mentioned, some come with government backing of sorts or some sort of formal structure. And in many cases, you find the diaspora is so disparate, meaning they're so spread out. If they could come through as an organization of some sort, as a grouping of some sort, and even a chamber of commerce of some sort, or even a diaspora network of some sort, to get the economies of scale and order, because somebody wants to invest $50,000, and if he groups himself with 2 or 3 other people who want to invest, you come in investing $500,000 or $1 million, that's looked at very differently from somebody who's coming to invest $20,000 as an individual. So sometimes we are really encouraging these groups to form investment clubs, like we did that in the US with the Uganda National Association, UNICE, Uganda North American Association for Diaspora. We have similar groupings for Kenya, in the DRC as well. You find that we ask them to get a bit organized, pool their resources, and come as one force. Now, on those grounds, maybe you have some leverage. Otherwise, an investor coming to invest $10, $15 million will definitely get the red carpet treatment as big as a wholesale investor impacting jobs. Also, the packaging. We've always asked the diaspora people, package the same way these companies package. They come in with the same respect. We will create X number of jobs. We will save X cost. We're looking for a tax incentive or a holiday to allow us to invest in this area, which is also addressing a social need as well, not just a commercial entrepreneurial need. And those are the things we try to help them organize as a bank when they're packaging themselves. And maybe that will enhance the red carpet treatment for diaspora. Thank you. Now,
Nigeria accounts for 1/3 of all sub-Saharan African remittance. In 2017, it was 22 billion USD. 2018, 23.63 billion USD. And the forecast for 2019 was 25.5 billion USD. And I'm assuming that figure, barring COVID, will indeed increase. Now, empirical studies show that 70% of remittance goes towards the improving the day-to-day welfare of the recipient families, which is something that you mentioned earlier on. I.e., in other words, 70% of diaspora remittance goes towards consumption. Only 30% goes towards investment-related uses. What are governments doing to change those figures? And dare I even suggest reverse those figures by way of strategic economic decision-making?
That's an interesting question, Vivi. In terms of government intervention, I think one of the things that one of the stances that we take, having basically worked in this area for so long, is that as far as remittances go, individuals will continue to remit in the way that they want to remit to families and so forth and so on. That's not something that you can necessarily change. However, what we can do, which is part of what we've been trying to do, is to develop other formal structures that enables the diaspora to invest their money in such a way that it makes a wider social impact. At the moment, the impact that is being made, it's very difficult to find the evidence for it because it's personal. It's very difficult to scale it up because it's personal. And to add to it, in terms of the remittances that we know, a lot of the data that we know are the formal channels. It's believed that across all of Africa, so not just sub-Saharan Africa, across all of Africa, if you were to add formal channels to informal to in-kind, you're probably looking at something like 200 billion US dollars. Yeah. And so there is a lot of momentum there, and it's much more about how do we put in structures that enable the diaspora to identify these structures, to change their behavior slightly so that they begin to invest in such a way that it makes an impact. If I can just give you a very quick example, very small scale, but over the last few years, we have focused very much on job creation and harnessing diaspora skills and resources for job creation. And what we've done is to set up a match fund scheme where we provide 80% and the diaspora have to put in 20% because we know that they're already putting in this money. Now, what has taken place is that instead of 20%, altogether, they've put in something like 50%. And altogether, for about £1 million that we've put into job creation in a few countries in Africa, they have put in 500,000. So it is doable, and the evidence is there. The challenge now is about scaling this up, and there are a number of different examples like these outside of what we do. And it's about scaling it up, and this is where the challenge is.
Staying with that, I agree that it is happening. Staying with that, a recent study showed that nearly 30% of remittance to Ghana, for instance, is used for investment in construction of houses. In other words, boosting the housing market. I'd like to hear what is happening in other countries. Is this being replicated in specific industries? Because I think that will give the diaspora a lot more confidence, because confidence is lacking. Like you said, a lot more remittance would be going on, but confidence is lacking. So could we hear, are there other countries replicating what Ghana is doing in relation to remittance and the housing market?
If I may just jump in here and talk about East Africa and the central belt where the bank operates, such as Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, DRC, South Sudan. Ultimately, the diaspora will address the biggest need at that point. And this just goes down to Maslow. What are the current basic needs that need to be addressed in these societies or in these places? And housing is a key basic one. The housing deficit in all these countries is immense. And I mean proper structured housing. I mean, that is why people probably put money in there. But there are some countries where the diaspora is investing in other areas like tourism. Of course, pre-COVID, you could find people setting up small boutique hotels aimed at business, or even like a business traveler, or in some places, lodges if they can get concessions into national parks. And I can give an example in Uganda where concessions have been given to put up world-class lodges in the various parks, the various national parks. And that is one of the things the government is trying to do to encourage diaspora investment. You'll find that, as you said, how do you get the confidence? The confidence comes from the fact that you have proper process and structure. You have visibility of your investment, and online banking and technology has enabled you to do that. You can get GPS locators, you can get drone views, you can get some certification from various municipal councils and so on. You can get associations who will help you look at that. You can get a bank, because if a bank is financing they'll definitely be monitoring the projects and so on. So yes, there are some things happening to build confidence of a diaspora to switch from just doing remittances to investments. But by and large, you'll still see the first focuses on the basics of life, the first level of Maslow's hierarchy, and then you start moving to the next ones, the aspirational ones. Once you've sorted out shelter, you've sorted out health, you've sorted out clothing, you've sorted out education, people start moving on to the next level. And most organizations like our bank try to help people move to those different levels and move through. But again, also, which areas, which sectors are you looking at? There's some easier ones, obviously. ICT, because we see that what's happening in the Western world or the more developed economies, you can quickly bring that and ship that into Africa because technology allows it to happen. So maybe, unlike in Ghana, some people are also investing heavily in ICT to modernize and speed up telecommunications. And because that is also happening across Africa, it's a good opportunity which other countries are taking advantage of, and diaspora players and partners are playing in that space as well.
Now, a recent study in Mexico showed that for every 2 billion remitted, production in the economy increased by over 6.5 billion. Why do we not see that in Africa? Why do we not see the same economics in Africa?
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for that question, Vivi. I mean, it's difficult to say that we're not seeing it. I think the challenge, as I said earlier, is that we don't have the data. Part of what is missing massively is really just about mapping out what is going on, what people are doing, what the different hometown associations, alumni groups, investors, business people, sole traders, people in the property market, all the investment that is being channeled in. No one is mapping this at the moment. And of course, part of that, as Anthony had said before, is because these are all small scale in different quarters. And unless you can have a program that just enables you to funnel through specific programs and enables you to follow through and to identify what is going on, it's very difficult to measure the impact. I mean, we've only been able to measure the impact because we have developed programs that enables us to follow through. But these types of programs are few and far between, and you need a lot more of that to be able to see that sort of impact. But I mean, if you take just going back to Ghana, if you take the year of return last year, I mean, that essentially showed you the way the economy opened, people sort of turning their properties and others into Airbnbs. And, it definitely provided a whole sort of supply chain of different, industries. And you could see that. But again, I'm not sure how much in-depth sort of data and digging has actually been done on this. So I think there is more than just potential. I think it is happening, but we need to make it happen even more. And for that to take place, you need a lot of willingness also from governments just to be able to back their own policies. A lot of governments across Africa now are putting in place their diaspora policies, investment policies. And it's about really just mainstreaming that into other policies as well, so that it sits, for example, alongside trade and investment, and it doesn't just sit within, for example, the Foreign Affairs Ministry. It needs to be mainstream so that you can actually really begin to follow through what the programs are, how effective they are, and begin to really see the impact.
Thank you.
Just a fundamental thing, which I know might sound a bit controversial, but because I'm a banker, you must understand the customer. Who is a diaspora client by their nature? And if you look at them, and most of the African ones anyway, at least mainly the ones in Sub-Saharan Africa, they are immigrants, and they use the word immigrants. And they went into a country, they overstayed their visa, and they found a way. And so how formal do they want to be? That is why Stella mentioned that the formal sector might just be capturing about 30% or 40% of what's actually happening, because the people sending this money through, somebody enters the US under the names Martha Mukasa, which is a Ugandan name. Now she's called Martha Williams because she has found a way to become a naturalized American after 10 or 15 years of living in the US. Now, some of these people don't want to be seen that way. So like the formality sometimes has a challenge that way. And that is just the nature of the beast. Now, what are governments trying to do? They're trying to make sure people can actually send money. Some countries are saying, fine, let's allow dual citizenship, meaning you can be Nigerian and British. And they've just accepted the fact that there'll be people, you don't want to lose that track and say, this is now a British person sending money. I am a Nigerian and I've become a UK citizen and I'm going through the processes now, but I still maintain my roots. And when I send the diaspora, inflows or remittance or investment, I still use a formal channel. Otherwise, the informal channel makes it very difficult for us to track the X multiplier. Is it 2? Is it 3? Because we don't know. The send information is a bit dodgy sometimes.
Yes.
Just a small thing to think about.
That's a fair comment. I think part of what we need is creation of platforms that increase accessibility to crucial information to Africans in diaspora, that highlight credible, and I emphasize the word credible opportunities of investment with assured returns on their savings. Because right now, that information just isn't there. We're being encouraged to invest in what? What is my return on investment? Nobody can tell you. So what we need is a platform that reduces asymmetry information when it comes to investment opportunities. How do you think that can be done?
It's definitely important. I mean, this is something that can be looked at the level of the national promotion agencies. They are basically in charge of attracting investors. And one of the things that we have talked about quite a lot is about enabling the diaspora to understand, as you're saying, where to invest. And also, I think sometimes it's not even just enabling them to understand just where to invest. What you find is that if you're looking at the market of diaspora who are first generation, they have links to hometowns, etc. They're very interested in doing projects there or investing there, but often it is without the knowledge of, do I need another school in this village or in this place? Is that, in terms of the needs. And I think the role of, this is why I will also mention the role of local authorities and the local sort of level, or the local, the chieftaincies, etc., is really critical in this, because a lot of first generation also tend to liaise quite a lot at that sort of local level. So it's also about how can we ensure through the national promotion agencies together with the local sort of level, some sort of information that really allows the diaspora to see, especially if you want to invest in that place in particular, to understand, actually, we don't need any more schools here. We actually need resources. We need some support for teachers, whatever that is, or whatever or basically whatever the business is. And that is really important, to be able to understand that this is not, this is actually about trying to bring different partners together to make this work. In terms of how the diaspora intervene, it really is important to understand that it's about developing different types of partnerships to be able to make this work.
Yes, I agree, Stella. And I think just to add on to that, and I think the question was really spot on, in the sense that information is a challenge. And I think Stella mentioned this earlier. Reliable information, data, up-to-date information and data is a challenge. I mean, the question is, how many people are in Nigeria? That's a question whose number jumps anywhere between 150 million to 220 million, depending on what day it is. I mean, think about that. Therefore, ask yourself, what's opportunity? If I'm trying to do a simple, basic investment in a water plant, how big is my market? If I'm trying to address a social need, or I'm trying to address an entrepreneurial need, how do I assess that? Now, data, sometimes censuses are not up to date. It's not maintained correctly. So even within country, you might find challenges. Now, of course, governments, and with the help of various partners, donor agencies and the World Bank and so on, are trying to address that. Just provide reliable information. Now, what can the various chambers of commerce do? I mean, the chambers of commerce is in all these countries, and there are some, for example, which are also linked to I mean, for example, in Uganda, you have the American Chamber of Commerce, businesses in Uganda, and similar things with various Western or even Asian countries, where their businesses try to get together and create a sort of database which they give to their countries and say, hey, there's an opportunity to invest in solar panels. Come. Opportunity to invest in renewable energy options. Come. Now, the partners, the business partners, the government partners, the CSOs, the CBOs, all those different agencies should work together to create a reliable database. And once you have that, then probably you can be able to channel opportunities purely based on the math. And if for some cases, most people rely on information from the banks because the banks are the most highly regulated industries in any country. So you see, look at the back and say, where are people borrowing a lot of investing heavily in? Agriculture, yes, opportunity. Energy, yes, opportunity. Trade, opportunity. Manufacturing, opportunity. But now because of COVID, health, food, ICT. So people are now going in that direction purely based on the proxy of what the banking private sector investment looks like. Of course, infrastructure developments are very costly, can only be done by governments and such big bodies, and those are done at the government and multilateral levels. But for the diaspora, individual or company, sometimes the best proxy for you is what you see in the financing industry. And I guess that's where we start.
I'd like to move, if I may, to the bigger picture. One of the biggest problems facing Africa, as we know, this is what we know, is mass immigration. The lack of jobs, growing insecurity, political instability, and cultural tensions, depleting opportunities, and all that. A recent survey in Nigeria showed that 50%, I think this is the highest this has ever been, 50% of adults recently surveyed stated that their willingness to emigrate overseas. We've never had that high an amount before. Now, I think that early stage businesses with smaller financing needs is another opportunity for the diaspora to invest in via angel networks. And that could address the migration level. But the success of such initiatives requires, just like you have said, joined up thinking. So what kind of collaborations can we look forward to from microbanks, the larger financial institutions, governments, local entrepreneurs, to provide the pragmatic and viable investment opportunities in local workforces? In particular, because I don't want this to just be a talk show, what can AIDO do to provide that platform?
Okay, I mean, I'll talk about what's happening in my region because it's practical. We, as a bank, for example, have partnered with organizations like MasterCard Foundation. They're doing a project which aims to create 30 million jobs over the next 10 years across Africa. And in Uganda, our target, I think, is 3 million. In Kenya, I think the target is 5 million across specific industries or sectors, for example, agriculture, MSME, some work around refugees, because you mentioned the whole idea of the displacement that happens. That's another thing which is kind of unique about Africa. All these different crises mean people are moving around a lot. I mean, people are moving away from a war or from disease, and that creates particular things. And in some countries, they deal with refugees very differently. But I'll talk about that later. Now, the aim here is to find a way to provide financing or opportunities for small businesses to create a job for somebody else. Now, that could be include training, business development, provide starter kits and so on after they've been trained to make people ready to receive the money and so on. Now, these are practical steps. Now, you said, what can AIDO do? AIDO, being a huge network with various skill sets across various countries, and in a place where you have access to philanthropists, venture capitalists, angel investors, and so on and so forth, people are trying to address the SDGs. And partnering with organizations which have the distribution, meaning, for example, you have the branch network, you have the agency banking network, you have the digital platforms which can be used to access and address all these different things. That's the way to go as far as I can see. I mean, our bank, for example, is using its branches across these 6 countries to be, for example, distribution points for certain things like PPE to help during the pandemic. We're using our business development skills to help certain manufacturers shift their manufacturing from whatever they're doing to producing syringes and producing PPE, masks, gloves, etc. All these opportunities can be harnessed primarily because we are looking at creating jobs and empowering the youth. I mean, Africa has the youngest population in the world. I mean, Uganda, for example, 70% of its people are below the age of 35. Those youthful population means that is a market which is young, vibrant, tech savvy, and growing. And those are things we should take advantage of. Only problem is we need the governments and other partners to help us build the infrastructure on which these enterprises will sit and accelerate, and then investors will come through.
Yes, that would be brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Anthony. Just to add to that, I think the starting point that you had made, Bibi, about the fact that in terms of the sector as well, or in terms of young people who are thinking about leaving, and some of them migrating irregularly or through like regular pathways. I think it's also important for us to realize with the diaspora, when it comes to investment as well, that a lot of them invest within the informal economy as well in Africa. And we also know that it's within the informal economy that, we create something like a minimum of 65% of jobs are created within the informal economy. So it's absolutely crucial to understand that this investment intervention that the diaspora are making is actually within this sector as well. And so if we can leverage that even more, then there's a lot of wins to be made. And it's not just the financial resources, it's also the skills, as Anthony was saying. A lot of them also take their skills as well. So it's about the finance and how you leverage that. It's also about the skills and how you harness that. So if I can just give a couple of very quick examples, some of the businesses that we've worked with, we worked in the last 2 years or so, or 3, with a young Nigerian diaspora investor who is based in the UK, who had an IT business in the UK and wanted to do some work in Nigeria. What we did was to provide him with the funds, which was a match. It was 30,000. He put in 7,500 or more even. But essentially what he did over 2 years was to outsource his business, making it cheaper for him. So he was developed in a business that was developing, that was coding and developing apps for businesses. Mm-hmm. And so what he did was to train up a team in Nigeria in the office, and he created more than 10 jobs within that space over 2 years of really very technical people who are then able to take on the work that comes through the UK. So he managed to expand in that way. But also the other thing that he did was also on the social impact side. He recognized that there is also a gap of having young female coders. So he's very interested in going into schools and starting them early. And so he engaged a number of schools and carried out a number of programs where they trained about 400 young people. The outcome of that is that what he's now looking to establish is a sort of tech hub, which will be like a weekend school, essentially. So I think the other thing as well that we need to remember is that the diaspora are social investors. Yeah. So when we talk about partnerships, what sorts of partnerships to bring together, whether it's the public sector, i.e. the government, plus the private sector, and other people within that sort of mix, we need to recognize the diaspora as social investors. That's where they are absolutely key, because a lot of them are interested in making this investment. Yes, they want to make a return, but they also want to make sure that things are working efficiently, and so that's how to look at it. And that's where, for me, this whole area around how we leverage it, how we bring in other forms of private funds to mash up with, with diaspora funds or skills to really raise this area of work is absolutely critical.
You're right. The diaspora don't just want to make money, they want to make a difference. So yeah. Yes, right. I'm going to ask my last question, because I know we're running out of time. What is being done by your institutions or organizations that you represent to boost the financial literacy level and thus the economic capability of the African diaspora, which will in turn boost their ability to invest more back home? So what I think I need to rephrase that. What what is being done to increase their financial literacy while they are in the diaspora? Because there are, as we well know, I mean, we're talking huge figures here, but we could be talking bigger figures. One of the problems that the diaspora have in the diaspora is even the economy in which they are operating, they're not able to take full advantage of, not to talk of doing anything back home. But oftentimes they're not even aware of the programs or things that they can invest in, even within the UK or America, wherever it is that they are, that will build their common financial base so that they can be more relevant back home. So what are we doing for them on the ground in the diaspora, within the diaspora?
Okay, I think, well, it's a bit easier for me because as a bank, we have a full diaspora. This engagement is just an example of that. I mean, every year, the organization, the bank, will travel, will do road shows, will do exhibitions, will participate in seminars across the world, no matter where it is. We go to the Middle East, we go to Asia, we go to other parts of Africa, we go to the US, we go to the UK, we go to Norway, we go to Netherlands, wherever we can get the groups organized in some shape or form. And I think our engagement with AIDO, for example, began in 2016, when there was, I think there was the first conference held in the UK. And this is part of our, and the aim about this isn't just talk about the products we can provide, is talk about the investment opportunities. And of course, technology has made it a bit easier now. Easier in terms of communicating, but difficult in terms of actual meeting, touch, flesh to flesh, and understand what your true needs are. But that is one of the aspects. Obviously, going digital and providing portals and all sorts of information, partnering with various other players across various segments is what the bank is doing to make the diaspora aware of what's going on. All our different touch points, and whenever we engage with all sorts of partners, be it IFC, be it MasterCard Foundation, be it UK Aid, US Aid, and so on. Also, in terms of education, forget about financial literacy, but just basic education. And we, for example, as an organization, sponsor up to about 1,000 students to go to Ivy League universities all across the world to go and develop skills and learn skills and get those skills. While they're in those communities, talk to the diaspora there and tell them, hey, I am from a disadvantaged community in my country, and I have been sent here on a scholarship to learn anything from biotech to aeronautic engineering if necessary. But I will use these skills to go back home and improve. For example, right now in Kenya, Equity Health is one. We have provided financing for students who we sent to become doctors, and those doctors, we've given them financing to provide clinics, which are being used now to provide treatment at below commercial rates to various communities as they give back. So all these different things and making people aware of those things help people understand what the bank is doing, organization is doing to enhance the opportunities that diaspora can present to help us impact and change lives in Africa.
Perfect.
Yeah. For our organization this area, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there is a gap there as well, just in terms of the understanding, I guess, of how to use your finance in a sense. I mean, there is, I cannot remember the percentage now, but there is a figure that kind of indicates the amount of savings that the diaspora actually have as well, which is quite significant. But I think in terms of what we do, essentially, it's also about providing the diaspora with business development support, whether they are in the diaspora, or whether they are in country. So this is specifically within our program for diaspora entrepreneurs, because there's also, in as much as we know that the diaspora have skills to share as well, there is also a recognition that we also need to provide support either way, so transnational support as well, to enable them to be able to utilize their finance and their skills as best as they can. So that is something that we focus on. But I think it's also important to mention that there are a number of different areas as well. There is also other areas, for example, in terms of enabling, creating an enabling environment for doing business in Africa. And I think going back to your earlier question, Bibi, about what AIDO and others can do, I think some of the other areas is also about advocating, which is something that the diaspora also do very well. So it's also about advocating for policy changes. And part of our program also includes bringing together policymakers and the diaspora for them to be able to address specific issues that are around diaspora investment, or specific issues that are also about the SME, the sector as well. So it's I think that question is particularly crucial that you ask. There is in the Philippines, because they've actually got a very strong diaspora policy, which enables them to send out diaspora, to send out migrants from the local sort of level. It also means that they're able to follow through with their diaspora. And what they do is that when their diaspora are in the diaspora, or when their migrants are in the diaspora, they also support them with different types of programs, which includes financial, and literacy. It includes entrepreneurship, and then they provide them with the products. So within a local sort of area, they will say, we want to build, this is the need here, we want to build these properties, we want to do X, Y, Z. And what they've done is already to provide some training to their diaspora. So they already know there's a pipeline, and they can literally either become entrepreneurs themselves, or they can basically invest. And I think we need a lot more of that sort of managed migration as well, from Africa in particular.
Thank you, Sarah. Definitely we do. Definitely we do. I'm going to take very quickly a couple of questions, and then I'm going to in respect of the rest of the conference. So let's have a look at the questions. Bear with me. One of the questions is, do you know why many of the banks of Uganda charge their customers for depositing and withdrawing their own money when this is not the case in the UK? Do you want to take that?
Well, I can take that. I mean, well, we don't charge people to deposit their money. I mean, we believe in financial inclusion. My job is to give you a safe, secure place to put your money. I can't charge you for that. There might be some charges for cash deposits of foreign currency, primarily because we have to repatriate that to the original countries, for example, to New York, for example. That's a small charge. But most of the time, it's free across all channels. And I think most banks have now adjusted to that position.
Okay, thank you for that. And the second question is, what preparations are being made for the inevitable change over to digital currencies? And how do you see this impacting on the remittance experience?
Oh, yes. The big question about digital currencies, cryptocurrencies. Okay, unfortunately, for example, in our jurisdictions, we are guided by our central banks, commercial banks specifically, and the central banks have not pronounced themselves definitively. They have just actually said, in some cases, have said stay away from cryptocurrencies until they have better understanding of them. We see it as an inevitability to some extent, and what's happening with some organizations across Africa is they are forming fintechs or other arms outside the regularized or regulated banking environment. So you can explore that. Maybe you're doing partnerships. If you have a holding company that's not a bank, you can probably invest that way. But as a bank, under regulation currently, your hands are kind of tied. But we are watching it. Obviously, we can see the disruptive nature of it, and we are not sleeping. We are trying to understand how best to do it and control it, and still maintain our mandates of protecting depositors and their investments and keeping the economies sound and solid. Because as you've seen in 2009, the banks, commercial or investment, can really create global crisis. So sometimes there is a balance between control and risk and innovation, and that is a tightrope. I can tell you for a fact, our view sometimes is the technology is ahead of regulation. So you find some regulators will give you a sandbox to experiment, but they will not put it into law or regulation because they're just not sure. And we understand that, and we'll catch up eventually.
I think we will end it on a positive note. Now, rather than summarize, because that will take even more time, I think the main point for our listeners now is this, that AIDO represents an amazing platform to change the narrative and to provide the information that is needed for the diaspora, to provide some collaboration, to provide some joined up thinking. One of the things that was mentioned, I think it was by Stella, was knowing at local level, being able to translate that information at local level, what the needs are. And I know there are a lot of traditional rulers listening. Again, please use AIDO as a platform to transmit that information so that it can be fed to those who have the means to change the narrative for those who are back home in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, can I just say, I'm going to bring it to a close here. I just want to thank both my panelists. The apologies from Chief Bimbo Folayan, who was having some technical issues, and one of our other panelists who also couldn't log on, so apologies for that. But can I just thank Stella Opoku Owusu from the African Foundation for Development, and Anthony Kituka, Executive Director of Equity Bank. Can I just thank you for a stellar job that you did? Thank you very much. Much appreciated for your knowledge, your time, your expertise, and your advice. We appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of the forum. This has been your facilitator, Bibi Clement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Bebe Clement and the crew. You have given us so much. You made it so interesting. We're also clued up. And particularly when you speak about Equity Bank, when you speak about money issues, we all want to know more, and we have so many questions. So, Mr. Anthony, you know that we might just have another event just on you alone, because you speak something that is so interesting. I could see that the questions are still flowing, you know, so we might just
try to answer them
on you alone. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say thank you to all of us. To know more about AIDO Network, I would like to invite each and every one of us to visit www.AIDO network.org. We are in 3 continents, that is Africa, USA, and Europe, and still counting. By next year, you will be hearing that we have really gone all global. And we are in about 8 countries in Africa. So this is quite the organization that would like to be associated with. So we do still would like you to be an IDOA. We call ourselves IDOAs. You have already heard. We are moving forward. Africa is ready for prosperity and business. So we welcome each one of you to go further and let us build this relationship that has started today.
Thank you very much, Baby Clement. Yes, brothers and sisters from the diaspora, we should collaborate to invest back in Africa. Thank you very much and welcome. Be blessed.